Okay, sweet. Yes, I think this should work. Fantastic. Yes, what is up to another? Fucking hell, I should use this. Apologies for that. क्या हाल है दोस्तों? Okay, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Vinamre show. You can see my face. You can't see my face. Okay, fuck that. Fucking hell, just getting a phone call. Can't talk right now. Sorry. Anyway, apologies. Off to a rough start, but welcome to another episode of the Vinamre show. This is your host, Vinamre. And it's fantastic to be here to talk about all the things I'm going to talk about. Let me just put up this fantastic wallpaper. Yes. Now that we're in business, fantastic. I hope you can still see me. So what I want to talk about today is essentially answer a bunch of questions that you people have sent me. Some general maintenance and stuff. So what is happening is I'm getting a really cool guest on Friday. His name is Zion Memon, apologies, and he's the CTO of Meme C's Culture Lab, which is a VR and cinema collaborative sort of think tank / studio, and it does a bunch of cool stuff. Has made a board game and a bunch of really cool VR experimental stuff. It's headed by Anand Gandhi, who is the director of Ship of Theseus, this famous movie. But beyond that, I just want to quickly go and start answering your questions now. Again, this is a bit weird. Oh, holy shit. This is a bit weird for me. I haven't done this before, so let me see what I can do. Okay. Is it okay to be cynical? No, absolutely not. But what is fantastic is you've recognized that, so that's a good first step. I think people who like anti-heroes, people who like cynical heroes, is because I read this somewhere that there is hope disguised in cynicism. That there's a level of hope that's disguised in cynicism. That people who are cynical had hope and they sort of twisted it to become cynical about the ways of the world. Or that they thought the world worked in a certain way and then they got hurt, they got burned. And as a result, they stopped trusting people and they became cynical. So is it okay to be cynical? I know. I'm going to say no, because it hurts you in the long run. You stop trusting people. You're generally pointing downward. You look at how things can fail instead of looking upward and seeing how things can succeed. If you are cynical, a very, very healthy, a very essential strategy to getting out of it is to map out your past, to really spend time, irrespective of if you're a writer or not, to spend time and figure out what have you done in the past that has led you to this place where you've stopped trusting the future, when you've stopped. Hold on for a sec. When you've stopped trusting humanity itself, and you're insistent upon this narrative that no longer fits with the rest of the world. So that's what I would say. Map out your past as clearly as possible. That will help. What is up, Shadish Srivastava? Thank you for tuning in, man. I'm still trying to figure out this streaming stuff. So far, so good. But yeah, map out your past as much as you can. A great program for this is the Past Authoring Program by Jordan Peterson. I've mentioned it a bunch. And the reason I say that is because it allows you to divide your past into 6 or 8 different categories and go step by step and recount both painful and positive memories from the past. And then relive them and also go through that trauma to figure out what exactly went wrong, how you let yourself be in that situation. So I think that will sort of remove the cynicism. And the other thing is, man, if you're cynical, and one thing you can do is stop hanging out with cynical people. There is a very age-old trite quote that is still true: "Misery loves company." So it's more likely that you are with cynical people, and your worldview is being colored by that. But I would say a healthy dose of going into your past and reliving that by rewriting it, would help you take care of the cynicism. Again, I commend you for understanding the first step, that you do see that there is a problem. Don't take this as psychological advice. This is simply something that has helped me, because I have been very cynical in the past. And it's usually coupled with a bunch of other things, including, a slight amount of depression, some amount of anxiety, a general will to either not do things that help you or to do things that make you worse. So that's what I would say. How to start knowing about psychology? Is it the books, the people, or something else? I would say my friend Prakhar, who has this great podcast called PJ Radio, he's a psychology student. He's a good resource as an introduction. But I would say beyond that, I don't like this question. And the reason for that is, well, it's way too simple. I think where you're coming from, and this is a massive guess, but I think where you're coming from is you think that somehow knowing psychology as you see it will allow you an edge over other people. I will tell you that's absolutely wrong. That's clearly not the case. What you do want to do is something like figure out who you are in different situations. And so what I mean by psychology is figure out who you are in public and with yourself. And then start mapping out how you behave. Start noticing your own thought patterns, your own behaviors. And so when you start understanding your own psyche, and what is hidden from your view that is in your subconscious, then I think you can start delving into psychology. Because I assume the sort of psychology you're talking about is, how can I, stand taller, make a better impression, appear more confident. You want an edge in interactions. That's generally what I think this question stems from. And those questions can really be solved if you look at yourself and who you are and try to just understand yourself. This is not an ideal answer because, I'm not a psychologist. I'll say that up front. What also helps is watching, again, this is standard, a lot of movies, speaking to a lot of people outside your regular domain of experience, which I find greatly helps. I've said this before. The greatest gift I've given to myself in expanding my own psychology or my own knowledge of psychology, as you say it, is speaking with a bunch of different fucking people. And what I mean by that is speaking with, taxi drivers, strippers, anyone you name it, trying to have those conversations to sort of map out their psyche. But yeah, I would say it's a mix of those things. I tried my best to answer this question. Again, like I said, there are other better resources for this. And I would say instead of trying to understand psychology, try to understand yourself, and pop psychology will fall in place. Not too proud of that. But anyway, moving on. How can I grow my podcast? Man, I have no fucking idea. I can give you some pointers that have helped me along. The number one thing is consistency. And realizing this is a long game. People who might not tune in. I remember the first time I released a podcast, I had 3 listeners, which sucked. There have been episodes where I still have 30 listeners or 10 listeners, but there have been episodes where I have 300 listeners. The number one thing is building a habit around your podcast. The number second thing is consistently improving. Some people say the third thing is niching as quickly as possible because there's so many podcasts in the market. But as a young creator, I found that there is no way I'm gonna settle in so early and fix myself to a composite idea of who I am. I would rather just keep experimenting constantly, and so I would say, yeah, consistency, articulation, just having fun with it. If it stops being fun and it becomes this sort of exercise unto itself, stop it. Beyond that, yeah, there's other things. Go on other people's podcasts, rep it as much as you can, and just be patient. I think I could definitely learn a lesson. Is to understand how to bring in the community more. I mean, I know people use all kinds of things like newsletters and stuff, but yeah, consistency is probably the biggest thing that I would say. Okay, next question. Agar dharti flat hoti to India kahan hota? If the earth was flat, India would be I had something for this. I have no idea. If the earth was flat, India would be on my ass, something like that. Fuck that shit, man. LGBTQ community, are you a supporter? If yes, why do you make fun of them? I am okay. If anything I say here would be funny, because agar main bolu ki no, it's not true, I also have gay friends, then I would be labeled as like, oh my god, he clearly is a normie or like an outsider, or even worse. What is it that they call it? A cisgendered male, high on the rank of privilege, that sort of thing. But no, I don't hate the LGBT at all. No, absolutely not. I don't hate them. I am all for sexual emancipation. I think it's a terrible tragedy that people have had to live in the darkness about their sexuality. I clearly believe in the free flow of sexual identity and expression as people see fit. My problem is with the custodians of supposed free speech in India around issues of race, gender, and privilege. What I mean by that is people who learn activism through liberal arts colleges and suddenly see the world through the lens of ideology, and these are colleges I can name, Jindal Global Law University, Ashoka University, there's a bunch, there's Mumbai University, all of those things. And talking about India here. And so they're trying to police my speech. And they're saying it's not okay to make jokes about gay people anymore. Why? I ask you why. I have several gay friends. I said it, right? And they laugh at my jokes when I make them about them, because I make jokes about myself. I'm hitting in all directions, not just gay people, right? The issue is they think that because they are able to champion the cause, it'll give them more retweets. They're trying to cancel my speech essentially, right? And I don't buy that. I think humor is altogether a separate domain, right? And while there is a place for sensitivity, people who are using humor should be allowed to say the things that are funny, and that's why there's politically incorrect humor. And because there's this whole set of, especially on Instagram, especially with the whole men are trash movement that is happening in India, there's so many females, great friends of mine, who I just see washed over by this wave of ideology. Gender and sexual studies, I believe, something, gender and class studies, something like that, right? Is a mandatory class in Jindal Global Law University. And considering that these disciplines were formed only a couple of years ago, these books are riddled with non-peer reviewed activist claims about sex and gender, openly inciting students to become an activist. I mean, this is not education. Activism is, I understand that students and activists mix together, but they're really peddling stuff that isn't reviewed by anyone. And so that is my problem. So I am a supporter of all religions, all faiths. That I absolutely am. In fact, I'm more liberal than most of these people. But I just don't want someone to police my speech. I should be allowed to say the word chakka because I think it's funny. I understand that, like the eunuchs in our country are suffering and all that. So people have been suffering all throughout history forever for time. People made jokes all the time, right? Why can't I say chakka, right? Why can't I say कि तू gay लग रहा है? मैं क्यों नहीं बोल सकता? Why do I have to walk on eggshells? Why do I have to walk on this narrow line? I don't want to, right? So it's really that sort of thing. That's my reservation. Do I advocate smoking up? Okay, this is a tricky question. Do I advocate smoking up? As far as Indian citizens are concerned, I do not advocate smoking up before the ages of 25. And hear me out why. There are a couple of reasons. मैंने खुद extensively, and I'm saying extensively in my earlier teens, from the ages of 16 to all the way till 20, so 16 to 18, for 2 years, I smoked a fuck ton of weed that was sourced from all parts of North India. And I'll tell you for a fact that marijuana was laced with all kinds of chemicals, rat poison, you name it, a bunch of other stuff. And so, I am very, very lucky that I was able to survive that wave of smoking laced marijuana, having enough brain cells to be able to run this podcast and still be alive to tell this tale. Because the people who smoke that marijuana in the same guise of this is legal and all of that. Again, I love marijuana. I have nothing against it. But why I'm against smoking up in India, I'm getting to that. Is that so many people who had mental diseases, latent mental diseases, became, those diseases became known, and I lost friends to psychotic attacks, to schizophrenia, to AD, to all kinds of bipolar disorders. That there's one thing called HPPT where people are tripping on acid forever, and so my stance on marijuana changed after I saw all these tragedies, and so this idea of this free preaching hippie who wants everyone to smoke weed because the world will be a better place, that just disappeared because I saw the realities on the ground, and as a result, I don't believe in advocating smoking up for people under 25. And the reason and in India, the only way I would advocate at smoking up is if the weed was regulated and tested and every bud was known and we knew the source, where it came from, that sort of thing, like they have in the US and other developed countries. In this existing situation where most of the weed we smoke is illegal, including the charas, I don't advocate it. I don't advocate it to first-time users. because you cannot control for the level of mal you're getting. You can control for the alcohol, even the cigarettes, right? But you cannot control for the weed that you're getting. And I know plenty of people who are smoking terrible laced weed, right? And they're I have even had friends who smoked weed laced with heroin. And so I'm not saying this lightly. I'm being very serious about it right now. And so my whole stance on this changed. If this was regulated, of course, I'd be happy to change my mind. I understand that me saying this would not have a dent at all, because we all know from pop psychology, people do the things you forbid them to. There's a very rebellious charm in smoking marijuana and defying society, that sort of thing. But in hindsight, I'm glad that I was smart enough to have survived that wave of smoking bad weed and live to tell this tale. My friends weren't so lucky. And so I choose to have this unpopular opinion around marijuana. Now, as for the 25 years of age, I believe I've read enough research that says that your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's responsible for making decisions and willpower, isn't fully developed till the age of 25, right? And I believe that's why people have that age around alcohol in India. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this. And so I found that convincing enough. Now, if I started smoking weed at 25, it would be a different conversation. You might call me a hypocrite for saying that, well, if you started smoking weed at 16, why should we start at 25? I don't know. I think if I was smart enough, I would still have tried it. But again, I want to say I have no reservations against people smoking weed. But if someone asks my opinion, that's what on a larger scale, if I extrapolate my opinion on a national level, that's what I believe. I don't think people under 25 should smoke weed. And I've also had a pretty complicated relationship with marijuana, because there have been times where I've become hyper anxious. There have been times where I've created great art, have had the most fantastic conversations. It's been the catalyst for a lot of my great memories from my youth. It's still my youth, but a lot of memories have been formed around it. And so I think my friends and I are in that place right now where it's a catalyst, right? We still get our shit done, all of that. And no, I don't mean this as some sort of a lie. I really mean it. But it's taken a lot of hard work to get to that place, and I don't think all people are like that. And so that is my opinion. And now a note about the regulation around psychedelics as well. So when I was 16 or 17, I also took acid, and this acid is something that I didn't test. And now you'd be wondering why would you test acid, right? Acid is something that you just pop. You don't have to test its purity, all of those things. Well, I was wrong. What happens is, internationally and everywhere else, including in India, there are several research chemicals which are being peddled in the name of LSD, and they virtually look the same as acid. And so your friend might bring you a tab of acid that has certain make of acid, like the Albert Hoffman stamp that was made in 1967, that sort of thing, right? And you'll take it, and you'll think you're eating acid, but what you're actually eating is either this thing called N-bomb, N25, or a couple of other research chemicals, which, mind you, mimic the effects of acid, but are not actually acid. And so that's this. I mean, I apply the same logic of regulation and prefrontal cortex development for marijuana that I do to acid. If you can test the acid and confirm its purity, please experiment. It's a great thing, right? This is not my medical opinion. This is just me saying the facts. Obviously, I would say make sure that you have the right mindset and setting. I read, as a 16-year-old, I read a fuck ton of forums, which put me in a good place, like to do my research. But when I went to the USA, my friend, my roommate at the time, was smart enough to get an acid testing kit. It's on Amazon. And we found out that the acid we were sold was fake. And that's when I started applying this rigorous method of testing. And after testing 2 fake acid kits and returning them to the dealer, we finally found one that worked for us, and it was pure. And so I believe that people are being peddled fake weed and fake acid in India and elsewhere, and so it's important to regulate it. That's my opinion. Of course, you're going to do what the fuck you're going to do. No one can stop you. Now, what is the next question? So, what's your opinion on automation, artificial intelligence taking up jobs of most of the people in India? I'm not really an authority on artificial intelligence, although I will say this. It's really important to develop range at this point of time. It's really important to develop a set of skills of ranges for you. And assuming the audience that follows me on YouTube and my podcasting audience, you're less at risk. But people who have been working in traditional jobs, your fathers and mothers, right, who've more or less specialized in one field, need to diversify, because it might not be a future that's exactly a perfect fit for the skills that they have. And so as a result, I feel like, well, yes, we are constantly being, outsourced to automation by just the fact that now you don't have to have as many people to run Spotify as you did once before. But what you do need humans in is complex tasks. There's a very interesting study that was found that if you pit a human being, Gary Kasparov, I believe they used Gary Kasparov, the famous grandmaster, against a chess computer, don't quote me on this, the computer wins. But if you put a chess master with a computer against another computer, actually I'm getting it wrong, irrespective, the point is that computers are only good at computers, no matter what they do, are still fundamentally good at procedural ideas. Whereas human beings have this innate ability in them to merge together complex ideas in a way that a computer can necessarily not see. So I don't know, as long as you can recognize that, you're probably in a good place. I don't have a prophetic answer for this, but my best bet is if you do have parents who have specialized for long, it's really important to teach them another skill that they can use online, or you can use those skills yourself. What else? Okay, should your dreams be materialistic in order to become successful in life or shape my life in a desired way? Yes, you need bread. You need to get that bread. You need to have a car, no, not necessarily a car, considering how walkable cities will become in the future. But you need to have a shelter over your roof, that sort of thing. And I don't know why there's this sort of hatred of money in our societies. I think money is the reason why you're able to watch me, right? Someone in your family had enough money to buy a phone or a laptop, and that's why you're watching me. And so, I'm assuming this question implies that there is a conflict between spiritual needs and materialistic needs. It's obvious. You can do both. I think you have to balance practicality with your calling, your spiritual calling, that sort of thing. Because otherwise life becomes too formulaic, too boring. If you just focus on, the next car, the next payment, that sort of thing. You need an overarching sense of purpose that is beyond you, that transcends you. And, that's where stories come in. That's where stories and myths come in. That's why having an overarching myth for your life that is positive and puts you in the right direction, or at least tries to put you in the right direction, can fulfill the void left from just the materialistic pursuits that are necessary for living this life, that sort of thing. But yeah, you can absolutely be materialistic. You don't have to just be spiritual. And besides, if your intent is to become a monk, you don't need to be materialistic. Although now there's several monks who go in flights, do the regular stuff, listen to music, funnily enough. But you need. Think about it like this: if you're a surfer, you need a fucking surfboard to ride the wave. You can't just ride the wave using your own legs, right? So you need a stable platform, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's why you should feel not guilty about being materialistic. I don't think so. Yeah, that's the end of these questions. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. I'm gonna try and figure out another way to do this next time, to save energy and to not do it on YouTube. All right, man. Cheers. And yes, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review. It really helps to get some, massive, good quality guests, that sort of thing. And I'll see you here on Monday with a new guest. Actually, no, I'll see you here again on Monday and Friday. Yep. Okay, bye-bye. Take care. How do I switch this